Welcome to my channel. Facts about Hollywood movies. Early Hollywood and iconic films. Hollywood became a major filmmaking center in the early 20th century, thanks to its favorable climate and diverse landscapes. The first feature film made in Hollywood was The Squaw Man in 1914. Gone with the Wind in 1939 is one of the highest grossing films in Hollywood history. Citizen Kane, 1941, is often considered one of the greatest films ever made. Casablanca, 1942, is a classic known for its memorable dialogue. The Godfather, 1972, is a landmark in American cinema. Star Wars, 1977, revolutionized use of visual effects. E.T. the Extraterrestrial, 1982, was the highest grossing film of the 1980s. Jurassic Park, 1993, showcased groundbreaking CGI technology. Film Awards and Oscars. The Academy Awards, Oscars, were first presented in 1929. Katharine Hepburn holds the record for the most acting Oscars with 4 wins. Ben-Hur, 1959, won 11 Oscars, a record that remains unmatched. The Lord of the Rings, The Return of King, 2003, also won 11 Oscars. Meryl Streep holds the record for the most Oscars nominations for acting, with 21. Titanic 1997 and Avatar 2009 were directed by James Cameron, both among the highest grossing films. Schindler's List 1993 won 7 Oscars and is renowned for its portrayal of the Holocaust. Animated films like Beauty and the Beast 1991 and Frozen 2013 have been nominated for Best Picture. The Shape of Water 2017 is the most recent Best Picture winner. Films like The Artist 2011 have paid homage to the silent film era. Blockbusters and franchises. Jaws 1975 is considered the first summer blockbuster. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is one of the most successful film franchises. The Harry Potter film series consists of 8 movies based on J.K. Rowling's book. The Fast and the Furious franchise is known for its high-octane action sequences. Star Wars has been expanded into a vast franchise with multiple trilogies and spin-off films. The Dark Knight trilogy, directed by Christopher Nolan, redefined the superhero genre. The Pirates of the Caribbean series have made Johnny Depp famous for his role as Captain Jack Sparrow. The Jurassic Park series explores the theme of resurrecting dinosaurs. The Twilight series was adapted from Stephenie Meyer's vampire-themed novels. The Hunger Games films are based on Susan Collins' dystopian novels. Cultural impact and trends. Hollywood films have a profound influence on global culture from fashion trends to language. Classic Hollywood cinema is characterized by the golden age of Hollywood from the 1920s to 1960s. The new Hollywood era of the late 1960s and 1970s saw a more innovative and daring approach to filmmaking. The 1980s were known for the rise of action heroes like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. The 1990s introduced the world to independent cinema with films like Pulp Fiction. In the 2000s, adaptation of comic books and young adult novels gained popularity. In the 2010s, saw a resurgence of nostalgia with remakes, reboots, and sequels. In 2020s, have seen a shift towards more diverse and inclusive storytelling. The #MeToo movement have brought attention to gender inequality and harassment in the film industry. Hollywood has played a significant role in addressing social issues through films. Industry and technology. Major Hollywood studios include Warner Bros., Universal Pictures, Paramount Pictures, 20th Century Studios, and Columbia Pictures. Hollywood actors and actresses often become international celebrities. The period leading up to the Oscars is known as the awards season, with many critically acclaimed films released. Hollywood is a hub for cinematic innovation, from CGI to 3D technology. Filmmakers often use iconic soundtracks and original scores to enhance the emotional impact of their movies. Hollywood has been at the forefront of digital innovation, embracing virtual reality and immersive experiences. Hollywood film premieres often feature red carpet events and press coverage. Studios invest heavily in marketing campaigns to promote their films. Hollywood is continually exploring new technologies and formats, such as virtual production and streaming services. The influence of Hollywood films on the world of entertainment remains a powerful force in shaping global culture. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.